We received the team to Sharm el-Sheikh airport, and I say here that we are completely ready to cooperate with all our friends to make sure that the security measures taken at our airport provide the safety and security needed for the people who come to us.
أنا وجدت من فخامة رئيس الوزراء تفهم وتقدير للجهود اللي احنا ورد فعلنا تجاه المطالب من جانب أصدقائنا البريطانيين، وكمان وجدت تفهم لأهمية أن هذا الموضوع ما يكونش له تأثير في أسرع وقت ممكن على مستقبل عودة المواطنين البريطانيين اللي احنا بنسعد بوجودهم في مصر في أسرع وقت ممكن.
As a matter of fact, I have found complete understanding and appreciation of the Egyptian efforts from His Excellency the Prime Minister, and how we are aligning and coordinating our measures together, and this is a good mutual understanding. And we also talked about the actions needed to make sure that this will not have any negative ramification on the future of tourism in Egypt, and that in the soonest time possible we restore the movement of tourists, of British tourists to Egypt, those who come to Egypt to enjoy their time, those who we are very happy to receive them in our country.
Thank you. Chris, thank you, Mr. President. I completely agree with what the President has just said. We've had some excellent discussions today, not only about what Egypt has done in the past to increase its own security and the security of tourists, but also the further steps that can be taken today that will help to make sure that our British citizens can return home after their holidays in Sharm. To answer your questions very directly, you asked whether we're the only country taking action. Actually, the United States have changed its travel advice, and there are some other European countries taking some similar action to what we've done. But my role is to act in the right way to keep British citizens safe and secure, and to put their security first. Now, I act on the basis of intelligence that I receive. I act on the basis of advice that I get. Of course, I cannot be sure, my experts cannot be sure, that it was a terrorist bomb that brought down that Russian plane. But if the intelligence is, and the judgment is, that that is a more likely than not outcome, then I think it's right to act in the way that I did. Now, I understand that it is obviously concerning for those people who are in Sharm el-Sheikh, who ought to be home by now, and they want to come home. And of course, I feel deeply for those people who are looking forward to a good holiday, who would have flown off today into the sunshine, who won't be doing that, who've had their holidays cancelled. And of course, I have great concern for our friends and partners in Egypt who want to have a strong tourism industry and who welcome 1 million British people every year. But the most important thing of all is that those people in Sharm el-Sheikh can come home safely, and that's why the extra measures need to be taken today. So I think we've done the right thing. We've had very good discussions today. I'm sure we'll be able to bring those British holidaymakers home soon because of the level of cooperation between our two governments. And more than that, I'm sure that we'll be able, over time, to take the necessary action so we can restore the holiday-making route from Britain to Sharm el-Sheikh and vice versa. So I'm convinced we will be able to do that. But as I say, my job is to act on the basis of the intelligence, making the judgment that if it is the case, we can't be sure, but if it is the case, it's more likely than not a terrorist bomb on that plane, then my job is to take the right action.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Please, next question.
Many people in the Middle East consider that the British policy is responsible for creating ISIS. Once by the military intervention in Iraq and Libya that paved the way for this fanatical and terroristic group to prevail, and once by harboring the leaders and advocates of Islamic extremism. Don't you think that there is a need to reconsider your stand and to review your policy concerning terrorists and fanatical groups without any exception, including the Muslim Brotherhood, which is the mother of all terroristic groups? Thank you.
Well, first of all, I think those people who say that the problem of Islamist extremism and the problem of Islamist extremist violence was caused either by Iraq or by action in Libya or elsewhere, the fundamental problem they have to confront is this, that one of the biggest acts of Islamist extremist violent terrorism was, of course, the attack on the Twin Towers in New York, which preceded those events, in the case of Iraq by 2 years, in the case of Libya by many more years. That came first. And I would argue that the problem of extremist Islamism and violence has been a growing problem, and it's a problem which is effectively a battle that's taking place within Islam. I know, and you know, that Islam is a religion of peace, a religion followed by millions in our world as a guide to their life and a source of faith and a source of strength. But there is a minority of a minority, as it were, that have taken the tenets of this religion and poisoned them and turned them into a perverse narrative that justifies suicide bombs and killing and maiming and all the things that IS are doing, so-called IS are doing in Syria and Iraq, and indeed that Islamist extremist terrorists are doing in other countries of the world. And it's this narrative of Islamist extremism that we should be trying to combat, rather than thinking that it was caused in some way by the actions of others. As I say, the Twin Towers, the actions of Al-Qaeda, that happened many years before the events you were referring to. As for the Muslim Brotherhood, what we do in Britain is we judge people by whether they are inside the law or outside the law. And if people are fomenting violence, then they are breaking the law, and the law should come down on them. And in terms of our review into the Muslim Brotherhood, which we discussed today, that will be published later this year. And I think you'll see, as you're already seeing in Britain, a much more robust approach against extremism of all kinds, and against those extremists that stop just short of endorsing violence, but nonetheless those extremists whose worldview encourages people to pursue a path of violence. And that is very much our approach here in the UK. I think we're... sorry, do you want to translate all of that? Yes. Sorry, I should have stopped halfway through. That was rather a long answer.
ستجد كثيرا من يقول أن التطرف الإسلامي جاء نتيجة للإجراءات التي تمت في العراق أو في ليبيا، ولكن الحقيقة أن المشكلة أمام هؤلاء الذين يقولون ذلك أن أكبر تطرف وأكبر حدث إرهابي حصل في التاريخ كان في تفجير برجي نيويورك، وهذا حدث قبل الإجراءات التي تمت في العراق وقبل سنوات كثيرة مما حدث في ليبيا. ولكن المشكلة أن هناك إسلام التطرف متأسلم متنامي، وهذه ليست معركة ما بين ثقافتين مختلفتين، وإنما هي معركة داخل الإسلام نفسه، لأن الإسلام هو دين السلام وهو الذي يدين به ملايين الناس. ولكن نقول أنك ستجد الأقلية التي تحاول أن تستأثر بهذه القيم السامية وتسممها وترسل بها إلى الأفكار المتطرفة والمتشددة، وتبرر بها القتل والتدمير والتفجير والتخريب التي تحدثه في المجتمعات، سواء في الدول في المنطقة أو دول العالم. وهذا ما تفعله داعش في سوريا والعراق، وهذا ما تفعله التنظيمات الإرهابية في الدول الأخرى. هناك فكر متطرف وإرهابي لا بد من مجابهته ولا بد من الوقوف أمامه، وهذا هو ما نتحدث عنه. مثلا كانت القاعدة على سبيل المثال، وكانت هذه القاعدة موجودة منذ قبل هذه الأحداث الأخيرة التي وقعت. فيما يتعلق بالتصرف المملكة المتحدة حيال الإخوان المسلمين، فنحن نرى كل التنظيمات ونرى كل الناس ونتصرف حيالهم طبقا لما يفعلوه داخل الإطار القانوني، إما أنهم يتبعون القانون أو أنهم يخرقون القانون. ولكن طبقا للمراجعة التي تم للإخوان المسلمين والتي سيتم نشرها في نهاية هذا العام، ستجد أن المملكة البريطانية تقوم بإجراءات أكثر قوة ضد التطرف عموما، حتى ضد هؤلاء المتطرفين الذين لا يمارسون العنف ولكن يحرضون عليه ويحاولون أن يجذبوا الآخرين لممارسة هذا العنف.
Thank you very much. Please.